This week on the Maine Business Show, we'll join you from the Portland Peninsula at Gorham Savings Bank, the future home of Maine Community Bank headquarters. We'll hear from Maine's largest electric utility company, Central Maine Power. We'll go to Lewiston for a look at Maine's history of innovation, learning, and labor. If you're a pet parent, you'll enjoy our visit with Rarebreed, a Maine-based veterinary service. We'll learn about the Maine Options program that helps those who seek recovery from substance use disorder find a supportive space. And we'll talk to Patricia McLean as she continues her work to help victims of domestic violence find their voices. I'm Quincy Hentzel. Join me next for the Maine Business Show. Welcome to the Maine Business Show. I'm your host, Quincy Hentzel, and we're joining you this week from Gorham Savings Bank on the Portland waterfront. Coming up, we'll talk about the merger of Gorham Savings and Maine Community Bank and what that means for customers and banking in Maine. But first, let's step back to the dawn of the 20th century and the year 1899. The first automobile was sold in the US, the paperclip was patented, Ernest Hemingway was born, as was Maine's first utility, Central Maine Power Company. We're here in Augusta to sit down with CMP's president and CEO, Joe Purington, to learn more.
I don't think Walter Wyman or Harvey Eaton, when they started Central Maine Power in Oakland, Maine, would have ever envisioned 125 years later that CMP would be part of one of the largest renewable energy companies in the world, or the largest utility company in the world. In today's modern grid, power flows are going in multiple directions. It's not from a generating source like a hydroelectric dam and to customers' houses. We have multiple generation inputs into the grid, and it's becoming a lot more technology focused. Without question, climate change is having an impact on the severity of storms that we see and the frequency of storms that we're seeing. Customer expectations, access to information is critical to how they live their lives today. So it's important that we do everything we can to continue to build a strong and resilient infrastructure, and also ensure that when we have these significant storms that we're prepared to restore power as soon as possible. Our focus is to build a smarter, stronger, more resilient grid for our customers so that it performs better each and every day. A good example of reliability projects that we've been working on is Section 80 in the Mid-Coast. Rebuilding that 115 kV line with steel poles will only ensure that during the harshest of weather conditions, that transmission system will stay solid. The Bedford Pump Substation that we just energized this year, we have multiple circuits that we can tie together to feed customers when we have a storm or an outage on the system to reduce the number of customers that are impacted. As I think about the grid, one of the ways that we can improve service to our customers is to ensure that we have multiple options for feeding those customers. When we think about the technology that we're implementing on the grid, we can tie circuits together through automation on the system, which is hundreds of smart switches that we're installing. Those are the types of investments that we see as being critical to improving resiliency to our customers and improving reliability of the system. And as communities like Biddeford continue to grow, we're focused on ensuring that we're meeting their growth needs for the future. As I think about doing business in Maine, it's the Maine people and the Maine commitment to do whatever it takes to ensure that you're successful. The partnerships and collaboration and willingness to work together to succeed makes a difference. We have been doing this for 125 years now, and we're going to continue doing it for another 125 or longer. What I'm most excited and really proud of is our employees and their commitment to our customers. Some of our employees' proudest moments are when times are the toughest and they're in the worst weather conditions, and they're out there doing everything they can to restore our customers' powers and see the smiles come back when that happens. For me, the joy is knowing that I work for a company that is so committed to serving our customers and businesses in the state of Maine every day.
Rarebreed Veterinary Partners is a Maine-based consortium of veterinary care that uses a new business model to create a continuum of care for your pets. It's an integrated network of partner practices that collaborates and shares resources for a thriving veterinary community. Co-founder and CEO Daniel Espinal showed us how a blend of community, technology, and resources enhances pet care.
Rarebreed is a group of hospitals that provide different verticals of care, from general practice care to urgent care to emergency care to tertiary care. The partners are effectively almost 130 veterinarians from Florida to Maine. We have most density, I would say, in Maine and in the New England area, but continuing to expand. We have 3,000 employees total, and at the headquarters we have about 100. We run all the back-end sort of operations. We think about pricing, test local markets, we do negotiations for vendor contracts, we run marketing, we run finance, accounting, and most of that's done out of Portland. We also have regional management, which supports kind of day-to-day decision-making at practices. Can't do it without every member of the team. So we like to think of ourselves as a network of team members that deliver the best veterinary care possible, deliver great work experiences, and delight our clients. Each practice lives to serve clients with pets in those communities, and so we take great care to maintain and preserve local legacy and also build a network to serve their communities. Partner practices think of themselves, and we think of them too, as important members of the community. And so, they have a great amount of flexibility in how they seek to serve their communities. And so some are involved in charities, some have angel funds, some bring in kids, to teach them about veterinary care. Yeah, so a lot of different ways that's personalized, but also trying to advance our communities. Our values are love, respect, and fun. Love, after all, is what draws many folks to the animal health industry to take care of cats and dogs.
So you have 100 employees here in Portland. Have you found it easy to attract the type of talent that you need for Rarebreed?
Portland, Maine, and Maine in general is Silicon Valley for animal health. We've got a lot of really big companies that create a great amount of talent, providing a number of different services for animals.
We're so glad that you're here and just expanded it even more so.
Thank you.
In 21st century Maine, we can easily list the products for which Maine is known nationally: lobster, potatoes, blueberries, and wood products. In recent years, we've added items like locally cultivated oysters and kelp. But soon after the Civil War, one of Maine's most lucrative exports was corn, specifically canned corn. Corn from fields across Maine was canned in local canneries, shipped from Maine ports, and enjoyed on dinner tables around the country. This week's History of Maine Business Focus, prepared with help from the Maine Historical Society and the Maine Memory Network, takes a look at the prosperity around Maine corn. Among the first canning operations in the country was something invented by the Winslow brothers in Portland, Maine in 1858. Winslow's patent hermetically sealed corn was their first product, and it was a huge success. One Winslow employee, George Jewett, learned the canning industry and then became superintendent of the local Burnham and Morrill corn cannery in Norridgewock. In 1910, Jewett went out on his own, building and buying canning factories. His largest one was in Norridgewock. Between 80 and 100 people per season worked at George S. Jewett's Norridgewock factory, with most wages being at the minimum allowed by law. One of Portland's more famous residents, James P. Baxter, also got in on the corn craze, building the Lovell Corn Shop, which was supplied by local Lovell farmers. Local residents flocked to the Lovell Corn Shop during early harvest, where they worked husking corn for 5 cents a basket. In 1900, Maine ranked third in the nation in the volume of its canned sweet corn. Much of the Baxter family fortune was made with James P. Baxter's canning enterprises, a fortune that allowed his son, Percival Baxter, to purchase and donate the land we know today as Baxter State Park. When we come back, since the dawn of the opioid crisis, Maine has worked to find options for those struggling with substance use disorder. It turns out, options is the key word.
These are real Maine Community Bank customers. Humble, self-reliant Mainers who don't mind rolling up their sleeves to get the job done, but always make time for their neighbors. They can sometimes be tough nuts to crack, but there's kindness underneath. These folks, they don't just live in Maine, they create community here. These are the people that make Maine great. They're the people that make us Maine Community Bank.
Addiction is a condition every state in the country faces. Substance use disorder ruins lives, tears apart families, and weakens the fabric of our communities. To help strengthen our cities and towns, the state is undertaking an effort to let people know that they have options to help them towards sobriety, whether their addiction is to opioids or alcohol. Gordon Smith has been the state's director of opioid response since 2019. We talked with him about options.
I'm Gordon Smith, the state's director of opioid response in Governor Mill's office. Our options program stands for overdose prevention through intensive outreach, naloxone, and safety.
Well, thank you for being here, Gordon. And as we all know, substance abuse disorder impacts so many individuals and families across the state. And I know we often hear that people would like to get into recovery, but they have a really hard time finding beds, services, resources to support them on that journey. What would you recommend to individuals or to families who are looking to get help?
Well, first of all, I'd say don't give up. Even if you've tried 20 times before, things change. We have a lot more recovery beds, we have a lot more recovery providers, treatment providers. We're making progress, and not only do we have more treatment options for people, but we have more opportunity to meet people where they are. Maybe they don't want medication, maybe they want to try an abstinence-based approach. So whether it's the family or the individual, don't give up, keep trying.
When we talk about substance abuse disorder, we often hear the phrase harm reduction. Can you explain what that means?
Harm reduction really simply means meeting the person where they are at. We don't in Maine, have many options for involuntary commitment, for instance. And most treatment providers don't believe that that's a successful approach anyway. So the person who's using, maybe they've used for a year, maybe they've used for 10 years, they have to make the decision that they want to get better, that they want to stop that daily chaotic life that they're in. And so meeting them where they are is just acknowledging their use of drugs and making sure that we're there the very instant in which they decide, I'd like to try something different.
On the show, we have talked to businesses like the Nonantum Resort who take pride in hiring individuals who are in recovery. What is the role that businesses can play for these individuals who are in recovery and are trying to build a new life for themselves?
Well, they can play a huge role in both reducing stigma and in acknowledging to their existing employees that they are supportive of people's recovery. In many workforces, it's not just a matter of encouraging them to hire people who may have a felony conviction or have had a history of use now that they're trying to get better, but it's also supporting people in their own workforce that they may not know are struggling or have struggled in the past. LePage Bakery was the first company to sign on to our recovery-friendly workplace program that now has dozens of companies participating.
What do you see as the future for the options program?
I see continued growth. We're still trying to get to the point where we'll have 32 liaisons on the ground every day, along with 9 recovery coaches, and there's also peer support people tied into our syringe program. So we'll have almost 50 people on the ground every day whose job it is to reach out to people who survive an overdose, and that's 94% of the people who overdose, and connect them with something, connect them with harm reduction, connect them with a pathway to recovery. So we have good data from our options program that shows how many referrals they've made to treatment, how many people they've helped. And so we're going to put as many resources into that program as we can, because lives are saved in the community. They're not saved here by what we do in Augusta. Our job is to give them the support, the resources that they need, but the real work is done in the community.
Gordon, thank you so much for joining us on the Maine Business Show, and thank you for all that you do across the state to help people who have substance abuse disorder.
Thank you for having me.
Coming up next, we'll learn more about our host, Gorham Savings Bank, and its upcoming merger with Maine Community Bank.
There are times we need to pause, to take a breath, and a beat, and reawaken the senses. Plan your trip at visitmaine.com.
We're back on the Portland waterfront this week at the offices for Gorham Savings Bank. Last week, we talked about how Gorham Savings and Maine Community Bank are soon to become one. With us to tell us more about how this plays out are Steve DeCastro, President and CEO of Gorham Savings, and Jean Hewlett, CEO of Maine Community Bank. Jean and Steve, thanks for joining us.
It's our pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
So Steve, I have to imagine a merger of two financial institutions takes a lot. What does this look like, bringing the two together?
It's a very heavy lift. I mean, there are so many decisions that need to be made, and Jean and I have been really trying to instill in our leadership teams that we want to make the right decision, but also, you know, do it with some pace so that we don't have a lot of things just lingering.
So Steve, this is more of a merger of equals than one merging into the other. Can you talk a little bit about what that means?
Both of our organizations are mutual savings banks, and that's kind of a unique ownership structure. We're owned by our depositors. And in this particular combination, there's not one organization that is absorbing the other. It's, you know, we are looking at the best practices of both organizations and trying to find the practice and process that will be the best for us going forward. So it takes a little more time for us to go through that as opposed to a traditional acquisition, but we feel it will make us stronger as we get past the closing date.
And Jean, obviously the organization's getting bigger. We're bringing two together. Are there risks involved with growing a financial institution to the size it's going to be Maine Community Bank?
I really don't think so. I think really it provides a lot of strength. We have stronger capital, we have a better branch footprint for our customers, and the employees that our customers are used to dealing with every day will still be here. The lenders, the branch managers, the management team, everybody's staying involved in the new organization, so it really is coming together and enhancing each other's strengths.
And your new headquarters is now going to be in downtown Portland, which is very exciting. How many branches will you now have once the merger is complete?
So we'll have 22 branches, and they will span from Lewiston, Auburn, Brunswick, down to Kennebunk, and then out west to Waterboro and Standish. The
great combination with this merger is that our bank, Maine Community Bank, had a large presence in York County and up in Androscoggin County, and some presence in Cumberland County, whereas Gorham Savings was all in Cumberland County. So together, we seam together those three very economically prosperous and diverse communities and makes a stronger bank.
So Jean, with this merger, can you talk to us a little bit about the governance structure? Because we're bringing two banks together, which each have their own distinct board of directors. What's that going to look like moving forward?
So both banks had a board of directors with 8 members, and together they'll come together and will be a large 16-member board of directors as we begin our future together.
Well, Jean and Steve, thank you for joining us again on the Maine Business Show. It's wonderful to have you here, and it's been great to get a little more insight into what the Maine Community Bank's going to look like moving forward.
Thank you, Quincy.
Thank you, Quincy.
Still to come, Patricia McLean is helping other Maine women to speak out against domestic violence. For 29 years, journalist and photographer Patricia McLean was in an abusive marriage with singer Don McLean. Following his arrest in 2016 on domestic assault charges, she left the marriage and established a nonprofit called Finding Our Voices, dedicated to helping women find their own voice and provide resources to leave abusive situations. Patricia, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
So Finding Our Voices has done such incredible work raising awareness around domestic violence, and you've only been around for 3 years. Can you talk a little bit about the accomplishments you've had in the last 3 years?
Yeah, I do think that we have flipped somewhat the idea of shame onto the perpetrator and away from the victim of domestic abuse. We've also provided a lot of resources to women to get out and stay out and to keep their children and pets safe as well through a lot of kind of groundbreaking programs.
Can you share a little bit about the programs you offer?
I think everything we do really is to mitigate the stigma, financial abuse, and the isolation that keep women trapped in dangerous relationships. Some of what we do to get rid of the stigma are these awareness campaigns, which include posters, and many people here may have seen them. They feature my photo portraits of 45 domestic abuse survivors aged 18 to 84, including Governor Mills. And these posters are in probably like 100 towns right now. The other thing we do is online support groups. We meet every week, and this is a place where women can come together from all over Maine, and they're not going to be judged. We understand, and we can just be with each other. No one really gets it unless you've been through it yourself.
Patricia, you were instrumental last session in getting legislation passed to help women who are in domestic abuse situations. Can you talk a little bit about that and what the next steps might be?
It was a very proud moment for about 15 survivors of domestic abuse to stand with Governor Mills as she signed the bill that put restrictions on violent domestic abusers from early release from prison. And we're working with our legislator right now to continue work on that and come with another bill that will make that even stronger.
Patricia, thank you so much for being here and for all that you do in our community to make sure people who are in domestic violence situations know they are not alone and that there is help for them out there.
Thank you, and I would encourage anyone, if they are worried about a loved one or friend, or if they feel that they're in a dangerous situation themselves, to reach out. FindingOurVoices.net. Our Sisterhood of Survivors is here for you.
From shoes to bricks to textiles, Maine has a strong history of manufacturing, and the many mills that fostered so much production remain key pieces of infrastructure. But now they house apartments, condos, restaurants, and other businesses. To ensure that history isn't lost, the Maine Mill in Lewiston is a museum dedicated to preserving Maine's manufacturing heritage.
I'm Rachel Ferrante. I'm the Executive Director of Maine MILL. MILL stands for the Museum of Innovation, Learning, and Labor, and we're here in our temporary gallery space. This is a show that we have up this year called The Hidden Elements of Labor, to explore the sort of untold stories of labor within our community. We worked with 2 artists to connect the history of our area to the present moment. Maine Mill is a history and culture museum in downtown Lewiston. We're physically based right now in the Bates Mill, talking about the textile, shoe, and brick histories that made Lewiston what it was, and also talking about the more recent histories of the area as well. We also have a permanent exhibit that tells the textile, shoe, and brick histories with a lot of industrial machinery. And it focuses not just on the machinery, but importantly, the innovations that were created in the area and the worker stories that made that possible. The new building is called the Camden Yarns Mill. It's on the edge of the Androscoggin River. It will allow us to do all of what we're doing here, but also do much more than that in a building that's all our own, highlighting the natural resources of the area and enabling us to program and work with the community in lots of expanded ways. We're scheduled to start construction there in October. We're a museum about the community, by the community, for the community, and so we are continuously telling that history and reflecting that back, both for the Lewiston-Auburn area, but also for Maine at large.
That's it for this week's edition of the Maine Business Show. Many thanks to our hosts, Gorham Savings Bank and Maine Community Bank. We hope you learned something new about Maine business and the people behind them, and that you'll join us again next week. I'm Quincy Hentzel. See you next time.